هلا بالخميس هلا 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 بالخميس ويكند عيال هلا بالخميس هلا بالخميس هلا 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 بالخميس ويكند عيال هلا بالخميس.
بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن استنى بسنة إلى يوم الدين ثم ما بعد. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Another Thursday night, Laylatul Jum'ah, an indication that the weekend is around the corner, inshallah, and that the sun is going to rise upon the most beautiful day of the week tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala. A day of salawat, durud, a day of dua, and a day of wearing your Sunday best, Friday best, inshallah. So we don't have any buba or akni or braifles here, Sheikh, but we have Arabic coffee, because we're speaking Arabic this evening. We're not going to speak in Arabic, but we're going to speak about Arabic, inshallah ta'ala. And with me, great pleasure to have colleagues and friends, alhamdulillah, Aashiq here, Sheikh Waseem Abrams, and our brother Ustad Muhammad Abdul Rahman. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Guys, shukran for accepting my invitation. And I know everybody here in the room is passionate about the subject. But I want to put one question on the table. Is Arabic a goal or a tool? Is it you know, people say, oh, I praat mooi Arab. That guy can speak Arabic, or he must be a top sheikh because he speaks, so Arabic so eloquently. But the person who's saying that doesn't even know Arabic, right? So, is Arabic a tool? Let's start with Sheikh Aashiq. Is it a tool, Sheikh, or is it a goal?
Just based on background knowledge, I think, as we know, all of us here are طلاب العلم.
Closer to the mic.
Okay, all of us are here طلاب العلم. And the scholars generally say that learning Arabic language is it's a tool, it's a medium, it's a wasila, because the objective at the end of the day is to understand the Quran and the Sunnah of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so I think Arabic is it's a tool. It's from min ilmi, from the sciences of it, which is the alat of the deen, not the ghayat.
Yeah, because always when you read a Sheikh's biography, and this is now in the days before, I mean, if you read Sheikh Ibn Uthaymin's biography, the days before official schools and universities, you will read that they learned Nahu, and they learned Hisab, and they learned these type of things. What's your opinion, Sheikh Waseem?
I would agree with Moulana Aashiq that it is a medium for us to be able to understand the Arabic language, to understand the Quran, to understand the Hadith, the Kutub of Fiqh, and so on. But I think in Cape Town, Cape Townians generally they know certain words. So a simple example, they know that when the Imam is giving the Jummah khutbah and he says Ibadallah.
They know they speaking to them, yes.
Or rather, he makes dua and he says Ibadallah. And that is supposed to be take note, but to them it's okay, that's the point where I need to put my hands down. I don't need to keep my hands for dua anymore. Or the Imam is making, he can make the most beautiful dua at a janazah, for example, right? But they're waiting for Allah maghfir lahu.
Okay.
They're waiting for that, those key words, and for them that is the interest that the Cape Townians find in the Arabic language, and when they will say, no, he's good in Arabic and he's.
Sheikh, but it can be humorous in a masjid when there's an ayah ending of Dallin. Besides and that happened in my childhood masjid, man. The Imam Yusuf Ahmad, during the days of Hajj, the months of Hajj, would recite that verse,
yes,
that ends with Dallin. It's not Fatiha, but the whole masjid will say Ameen. Because they're waiting for that. They're acquainted with certain Arabic words. And
I remember, Sheikh, you probably won't remember, but your days when we studied in Egypt, one of the Tajweed Sheikhs, he made mention of something. He says, whenever we listen to Qur'an, we are so we're so used to screaming Allah, Allah, and Allahumma yazidak, may Allah increase you.
Yes, yes, yes.
And then he mentioned the ayah, khudhu faghullu. The Qari recites, khudhu faghullu, thumma al-jahima sallu. And everybody's screaming, Allahumma yazidak. You know?
Astaghfirullah. And I think that's definitely an indicator that we need to have some type of Arabic knowledge. Sheikh Muhammad, how do you feel? Arabic. I mean, you teach Arabic online, basic Arabic.
Madina book one.
Madina book one.
Yeah, it's like it's also the tool. It is the tool. I think it's the tool. If you don't have Arabic and you are serious about talab al-ilm, it's you're gonna have that hole that you're gonna hit. Man.
Yes.
I have access to, like I know one scholar said, he said, you know, you are in a madrasa now. Don't worry about the English. Don't worry about too much about hadith or tafsir or any other subject, but concentrate on that Arabic, because once you have the Arabic, you're able to access all of that.
Yes.
And now once you if you want to take a bit of hadith, take a bit of tafsir or anything else, and then you give half your time to Arabic, you are those books that you could have accessed in English, you can access them whilst you're studying. But if you leave them off and you concentrate on your Arabic, you can access much more books, and you can access those books that were originally written in Arabic for the student of knowledge.
No, definitely. I mean, if you're not going to prioritize during the first early days, and how important is priorities, Sheikh Aashiq? Because you find a person, you know, he's just landed in whether it's the Darul Uloom or in whatever university, and he's asking about this one's religion. How's this one? Is he an upright person? Is this one? And they start focusing on personalities even before, you know, learning Arabic, and it somehow takes up the time.
Yeah. And we see many examples of this in our society where people study in various institutions, not prioritizing what they are supposed to learn and be studying, you know, putting effort in things which are less important. Not saying it's not important, but less important. And at the end of the day, when they do graduate from these institutions, they graduate half-baked and, you know, with serious gaps in their knowledge because of not prioritizing what is important.
Yeah. And I think of our colleague and friend, soon to be Dr. Ashraf Peterson. Right? So I always use him as an example, especially when it comes to Arabic, man, because he had studied in Libya, and then he came to Egypt, and then he did the Thanawi in Egypt, and then he was accepted for Medina, right? He was like ready. I mean, if anything, he was more ready than anybody else, over prepared for Jamia. But then he said, look, I need to finish my Quran. I need to brush up on my Arabic. So I'll go back to Shu'bah. And he did that, right? And now we know he's in the final days of his PhD, the first South African to achieve that. If he didn't have Arabic, and we know the Sheikh even speaks English in Arabic. But Sheikh, so last night, the students at Al Furqan, they were asking me, Sheikh, what is this? Let's learn Arabic. Because they're confused whether it's a class. So I said, no, we're going to speak about our experiences of learning Arabic, because many people don't consult when they're choosing an Arabic program. Because somebody that's going for Umrah in December, Sheikh Waseem, his need is different to someone that wants to understand what is read in Taraweeh. He just wants to understand it. And someone who wants to be a serious student of knowledge.
Most definitely. And I think, like you rightfully said, someone is going for Hajj or for Umrah, they don't necessarily need to learn what is the grammatical rules of Arabic, you know, as opposed to someone that wants to learn Deen. If I may just perhaps just rewind a bit and say, you know, with any other language, if you look at school, for example, if the child does not excel in the English language, I mean, if the child cannot read, then you will find that the other subjects are going to be difficult for him, whether it's maths, whether it's history, whether it's geography, you know. The same with the Arabic language, you know. Put a lot of effort. If you're serious in studying the Deen of Allah Ta'ala, if you're serious in wanting to, to put in effort, in learning the sciences of the deen, then put in or start off with the Arabic language. Make that your asl, your usul, because again, that is your bab, that is your door to all other sciences.
Yeah.
You know what? A beautiful statement, I think, of Shafi, a great scholar.
Rahimahullah
The
ta'ala.
objectives, the high objectives,
Maqasid.
maqasid of the deen. He said that, to the extent of your knowledge of Arabic, that will be the extent of your knowledge of Islam. If you have an amazing grasp of the Arabic language and knowledge of the Arabic language, that will determine your understanding of the deen. The less understanding of Arabic that you have, the less knowledge you will have.
No, I agree with that 100%, Sheikh. It's like a manual. If you buy something
Exactly.
and you don't understand the manual because it's written it's in your own language, but you're not acquainted with that terminologies, with that level of English even. Sheikh, okay, this question, not question, or this issue for me, right? We have the annual Hifz competition at the town center masjid. And then obviously the Hifz is on another level, mashallah. I mean, our young Hufaz, they're really taking it to another level in retaining the Qur'ans. Even the tajweed, it's marvelous, mashallah. But the issue of waqf and ibtidam, stopping, a person will stop halfway in a word, Sheikh. It's perhaps like yu'minu, right? So yu'minu, and then you go na to the next word.
Yeah.
Because there's a lack of the Arabic language. And yes, I think probably for me, memorizing the Quran without understanding it is easy. Do you agree with that?
Memorizing the
Quran without understanding it is easier. What
I would assume that it's easier memorizing Quran with understanding.
Sheikh Waseem, you studied with Arabs, right? You've heard them recite with ma'na, putting like things together, making some tarkeeb for it to make sense. But if I have to now memorize a Chinese phrase, right, and I just memorize it the way I hear it or see it, it would be easier for me to memorize it with understanding of a new language. So I feel.
Can I come in and say that being a Hifz teacher, I see that you find different types of students. You're going to get your student that if I explain to him the meaning of the verse, he tends to memorize it quicker. Then you get the next student that just needs to say it the parrot fashion. I need to recite it, and he needs to recite it after me. And then you get the other student that just needs to go sit quietly in a corner, with no disturbances and just repeats it. So it varies from person to person, really. But there are certain, for example, Surah Yusuf. Surah Yusuf would be one of those surah that if you understand the story,
it takes you to another world.
Exactly.
Yes, definitely. Ustad Muhammad, so you teach online, right? And you're teaching something called the Al-Qaeda Al-Nuraniyah. Yeah. So what's it all about? The big surah.
That it's a different style altogether.
Okay.
So that compared to the normal surah, they have it's two parts usually. Sheikh knows, and it takes some time to get from part 1 to part 2, and then maybe you end up 3, sometimes even 4 years in that. With this specific book, it takes you from knowing absolutely nothing to knowing how to read Quran proficiently with tajweed within a space of 17 lessons, if I'm not mistaken. 17 lessons. But the way, the method, that's the important thing. So not everyone, I pick up a book and I can do it.
Yes.
There needs to be a method of doing it. So for instance, they say Hamza Fatha ba Fatha ba Aba da Fatada, like that.
Because like I mean, when we go to school, we don't at the beginning but might have changed now. But back in the 80s, right? You didn't learn ABC.
No.
You learned the sound, man.
Phonics,
and only later you learn the names
of the letters.
Of the letter. So Al-Qaeda Nuraniyah does it do the same.
So what we usually do, and Sheikh Waseem, as everyone here should have experienced that they teach in the maktab, and we teach the learners alif ba ta ta jim ha
It's not
like
much
that, and it's just like a
They just-
song type of thing,
just
like the
just names,
ABC.
yeah, letters, yeah.
So they got it, but
It's not useful.
it's not
But now
useful.
yeah.
So this one, this book, you actually they pay close attention to the makharij, and it takes a bit more time. It takes more effort on the teacher to. So what I do is most of my classes are not like big classes, under 10. I can't do more than 10.
And this is
if-
an hour class?
an hour. So if you have more than 10, you're going to lose. Some of them are not going to be knowing where's what's happening. So you need to take a small number. And this, I think this program is quite good, and it's used in the Masjid Nabawi as well. So I think it's a very good program.
So rapid is good.
Yeah, and there's a lot of how can I say, development. Also, they have a YouTube page and those things. You can view the videos and all those things. So it's quite good. And once I came across it, I think I was like attached to it. I was hooked to it.
Sheikh, you speak about 4 years. When I started studying, first holiday home, so they give me a madrasa teacher post, right? So I'm teaching people. So I'm like 18, and I'm teaching people that's 16 and 17, right? And then there's a sister in that class that I'm teaching that's still in the surah. And then I asked her, "You're a new Muslim?" She says, "No." First time in madrasa? No. I've been going to madrasa since grade 1. Every time I start a new madrasa, they tell me, "Funny begin." You start, and I think that's very unfair. I mean, you can rather panel beat what the person has already, man. But imagine being put back. Imagine you move to a new school and tell you, okay, no, you can't do grade 2, grade 1.
Need to go back
And then next year,
Maybe
grade 1.
you speaking like that, now post-COVID, we've seen students now coming back to madrasa. They were at a certain point in the surah, some even in the Quran, come back to madrasa and they know absolutely nothing. They need to go to the front of the. I mean, it's not that we're putting them, or we want to put them in the front of the surah, but they don't know anything. And I'm not talking only about grade 3s, 4, and 5. I'm talking about seniors that are in high school, that are struggling, and we as teachers, it's a battle. But inshallah,
I think, Sheikh, in general, retaining is difficult. Man. I look at myself, right? The three of us, we've been on long holidays. The students that study in the Darul Ulooms always say 9 months away and 3 months holiday. But imagine, Sheikh, you come home for 3 months. You don't use that word at all. Have you experienced, right? You get to the airport. Now, what is a money exchange? I knew it 3 months ago.
Yes.
What is a coffee shop? What do I call a sandwich? I mean, and these things you don't use, and you lose it. So now, we're preparing for lectures. We're studying. We're doing our normal reading, and so the mustalahat or the technical words we still retain. But those everyday words,
we forget,
it totally.
But generally,
goes.
as a tulab that study the Shari'i sciences, your vocabulary is made up mostly of like Quranic words, hadith, fiqh words. But those everyday words, as you mentioned, you forget it.
Yeah.
What's the axe and what is the hammer and all of these things.
and when I meet with students from the West, maybe brothers from the UK and America, they refuse to speak English. I mean, they just say, "Look, Akhi, we can speak Arabic, and this is the medium we're going to use as a Muslim to be speaking Arabic." But this third language does come in useful, Sheikh. In our family, unfortunately, my wife speaks Arabic, and so if I need to get something from her without the rest of the family knowing, or if we need to, leave, we need to, call quotes on this family function.
That was like us in Egypt or in Saudi with Afrikaans language.
Oh, definitely.
If you didn't want anyone else to understand, we were speaking Afrikaans.
So, Mashaykh, obviously, there's different goals. You have your Haji, you have your person that just wants to understand what's read in the Taraweeh, and then your student of knowledge. So obviously we've gone through different methods, right? When I was on high school, I did Arabic on high school. I was at a BBA Boys College, which became Islamia, right? And so for 4 or 5 years, you do how's it, twice a week Arabic, right? At the high school?
Yeah,
once a week?
Twice a week, yeah.
Okay, so you build a bit of vocabulary. But then you go and study, and then whatever you've learned in 4 years, they like teach you like in a month, in a few weeks,
in a
everything's
few
like
weeks,
done, right? But okay, so I went to a Arabic center, right, with foreigners, and we were taught Arabic from scratch. I was in a class with different nationalities, and the only common medium was Arabic. And you're like thrown in the deep end, and you basically have to swim. I've never really sat down and memorized scales. You hear from other students, no, we got hiding for scales. So how's the Darul Uloom system with
The Darul
regards to
system
learning
is,
Arabic?
it's. I think it's totally the opposite of how they teach in the Arab world. Primarily because your teachers will be speaking Arabic to you. You will be taught Islam via the Arabic medium.
Okay.
So for you to access that knowledge,
You have to know Arabic.
you need to know Arabic. Whereas if you study in the Darul Uloom or any Western setting, you'll be taught via your language. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
So in the Darul Uloom, there's a bigger concentration on Arabic grammar.
Yes.
And a very dry, Arabic grammar and the sort of. I've gone through the Medina book, so I know how a student will learn it. You learn it as you go.
You
through
don't even know you're
conversation.
learning it.
You don't know
You don't know you're learning
But
sarf.
when you are a beginner in a Darul Uloom, you are being taught. Fa'ala, fa'ala. The Ustad just tells you, look here, just memorize without understanding. You will later see how it,
Okay.
how it comes into play. And also, with the Darul Uloom and the Jamia setting, if I can call it that, the Arab world setting departs and where it separates, the purpose of the Darul Uloom is to make you literate in the classical literature. You get what I'm saying?
Yes,
That's
yes.
basically it. We are creating religious leaders. Those religious leaders need to be able to access classical knowledge, whether it's fiqh, tafsir, whatever. We need to teach them grammar, vocabulary, and practice. And that's why a lot of what we do is, they call it tarkib. Okay. Well, a lot of what we do, they call it tarkib, right? So they will go through an entire book and you need to break down every word. ذهب حامد إلى المدرسة. You do
So
it.
if you miss one in that system, if you miss one word, you're like totally.
How do you mean? If you must one word?
If you don't understand one word in a sentence, you're like totally lost. You can't just
Not
make it
necessarily.
up. Okay.
No. The more obviously you pick up of the language, like even now when we read books in Arabic, like I'm reading a book by Sheikh Salman al-Awda called Allamani Abi. It's an amazing book. It's like ta'ammulat, his reflections on the story of Adam and Hawa. It's an amazing book. I would encourage any person who knows Arabic to read that book. So sometimes I read a work, then Sheikh Salman uses a word, and I don't know what the meaning is, but in the context you can pick it up.
Yes.
You can pick it up. Okay, this is what it means. You get what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that's the way the Jamia setting, the university, the Arab world, and the Darul Uloom stuff. It's what is the purpose? The purpose is become literate in the classical literature. And so there's a great focus on grammar, sarf, and applying it in books. ذهب حامد إلى المدرسة. ذهب يذهب is the فعل الماضي. حامد فاعل. And إلى المدرسة جار مجرور. في محل النصب whatever. This is how it is taught. Now, many people would have an issue with this, especially if someone who studied Arabic in the Arab world. If you had no exposure to Arabic, you wouldn't.
That's the only way you know. That's the only
you
way
get what I'm saying. So people, if you speak to people, they would say like, "Yo, this is a difficult way of learning. It's dry, it's boring." Whereas you guys, when you studied in the Arab centers and stuff like that, you were taught it in a very natural way. It's taught via conversation, practice, like how I taught English in Saudi Arabia. So I know how those kids. We taught them grammar in the mornings, and in the afternoons we would have a conversation class with them, muhadatha. They just speak with mistakes, and that's how you acquire language, and that's how we all studied language. We learned a language. I'm Afrikaans, by the way. That's my first language, right? English is my second language. But we learned it in the home. Man, paat gepraat met ons. We didn't learn. My ma het gesê hy's 'n werkwoord hierna. Hy's 'n naamwoord. We didn't learn it like that. So one thing that you could say against the Darul Uloom system is that it is not the natural way. We now, the Darul Ulooms are always trying to progress and evolving. So what they do is they add lots of books like in our madrasa, we had Al-Arabiya Bayna Yadayk. We did the entire syllabus, all 3 books. We do all the books by Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi. The Qasas al-Nabiyyin. We do a lot of readers. Al-Qira'at al-Wadiha, Al-Qira'at al-Rashida, to see that conversation. And the Ustad will say, stand up, have a
How about
conversation with
getting
one another.
an Arab teacher? Do they do that in Darul Ulum?
It depends. It depends, yeah. So
The
I know
availability.
in your places like Darul Ulum, Newcastle, they are very open to that. They have Arab, either Arab speakers or Arab teachers or people who studied in the Arab world to come teach in those madaris. It depends how open the madrasa is to this. We had many teachers like Sheikh Abdullah Somali. His English was very limited.
Still.
Yeah, it's
I
extreme.
think they say he speaks English, but again,
No, no,
another
no.
another
He
person,
doesn't understand
another
English.
person who will never speak English when he meets me.
Yeah, yeah. He only speaks Arabic. So he taught us, right? He taught us the Ajrumiyah, right? Sheikh Tariq Appleby, we had him. You know, so many of our asati that would speak Arabic to us in lessons and teach the lessons via the Arabic language.
Now, Sheikh Aashiq, one of the people that I know that's very precise in everything they do. So when you saw him coming in, that kufiya, that pint, right? So he's very precise.
MashaAllah.
So Sheikh Waseem, I know you as a very precise person. So when studying Arabic, right? What was your method? Right, your own method, because Sheikh Aashiq is talking about going through the readers and looking up meanings of words, right? And that was personally my method also. Right, I didn't like this whole memorizing vocabulary, man. Like building up a bank of vocab. It's not in sentences. For me, that
it's like disjointed knowledge, scattered.
And students preferred. Lots of students preferred that way. Like how many words do you at the beginning? How many words do you memorize per day?
But we also
I memorized 15, 20.
We also did it like that. So what we would do is I would walk around with these small art covers, put alif bata like that, and
almost like a dictionary.
Yeah. Then the teacher would tell you when you write the mufrad, you write the jam as well. When you write the maldi, you write the mudari. Memorize together.
Okay. Well, what was your method at the early days?
Okay.
I know after leaving Egypt and you went to that sounds from there. And you went to Makkah, you told me, oh, Lilia, maybe a file maf'ul bi. Because no more funding.
No, I think okay. My first I did a bit of Arabic here back home at Darul Islam Sheikh Adil Atas, you know?
Yes.
So we did the Muhammad Harun.
Yeah,
yeah. Oh, yes.
UWC book. First steps in learning the Arabic language.
Yes.
No, that's,
But my first.
Muhammad Kamish also.
I know, but
yes, correct.
But I know that one, the green book.
Yeah. But my first real encounter with the Arabic language was in Egypt. But it was, different parents teach their children to swim. The one will now start the very, very
The other one throws you in.
The other one throws you in the deep end, and you must figure your way out. That was Egypt for me. Because we went, Sheikh Sidi started with the markers. Our first day, we entered into the Dirasa Khasa.
Subhanallah.
And everything is just Arabic. You are just given the books, and somehow you need to figure out what's happening, you know. And it's not at a slow pace. It's at a fast pace, you know. Luckily, we had they were older students, you know, that were there before us, like Sheikh Yusuf Hasib, Sheikh Rashid Naqshbandi, and so on. That assisted us. Okay, first go to Markaz, and so they took us to Markaz Neil. That is where we now we started crawling basically at Markaz Neil, because Markaz Neil basically took us from Assalamu alaikum kaifa haluk, and you know, that assisted us. Then going from Egypt to Mecca again. Oh, before I get to that, so I had a brilliant roommate, mashallah, hafidahullah, Sheikh Yusuf Hasib, who just told me, read. Just read. Pick up any book and read. And so it's my first few months in Egypt. I'm going to the Ma'arad with Sheikh Yusuf as if I understand Arabic and I know Arabic. Ma'arad, by the way, is the book fair.
I think the biggest Islamic book fair. I mean, students came from Syria to Egypt. No, we have a book fair. Students came from Medina. Oh, we have a book fair. And they get to the Cairo book fair, like, there's like 10 of our book fairs.
So I'm going to the book fair. My first few months, Preston, I'm going with Sheikh Yusuf, and he just said, buy that book, and then he just told me, read. Even if you don't understand, read. You'll get to a certain point where you do understand. Then you go to Makkah. Then I got accepted to Makkah, and their system is totally different. They literally take you from Alif. They literally take you, or they show you what is an alif. You need to, as you learn in school here about ABC, they take you from alif. They'll take you by the hand, literally. And again, I came from Egypt, so I knew a bit of Arabic. And now sitting in a class where the ustad takes you by the hand and says, "This is a table. This is a chair. This is a window." You know, and the system again in Makkah. I'm talking too much here.
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Go on.
The
Go ahead,
system
Sheikh.
in Makkah is designed in such a way that with all the subjects that you do, you know, it's all connects to the Arabic language. So it's the qira'ah, which is just the reading, conversation. You'll do a bit of the introduction to balagh. So everything that it's connected to the Arabic language. You'll do a bit of fiqh, you'll do a bit of
But
tafsir.
to aid your knowledge of Arabic.
Is to aid your knowledge. It's designed in such a way that it. I mean, the waqf al-ibtida, all of those. There's this. All of those subjects that they give you in the first 2 years in Makkah, before you can even think of going to university. In your very first 2 years, their main priority, their main focus is to get you to understand the Arabic language.
But I think the systems are different, man. How it's set up, because if you look at them, we're gonna get to Medina now. Basically, a person can become Muslim today and go to Medina the next semester,
Yes.
and he'll be able to fit into the Shu'ba system. Whereas if you look at Egypt, right? So Egypt has, as we have the Al Azhar High School here in Cape Town, it's been in Malaysia and Indonesia for decades, right? So they have equivalency or mu'adala. So they are
Bangladesh
expected
also.
to come with a background of Arabic and just fit into high
Yes.
school, right? Because if you look at the college or Ba'uth or high school, it's not like a high school, man. Because I mean, I know in Medina, you never do arud, for example, in Shu'ba. Or if you're not going to go into the faculty of Lugha, you're never going to do
You're
it.
gonna touch it.
You're
on.
never going to really do balagha, really, right? But in that system towards going to university, and those Indonesian, Malaysian guys already studied it there, it's expected that you have to get up to standard, because when you get to university, you're going to be with Egyptians. The only difference between you and an Egyptian is your muqarrar in Quran. Where he has 7.5 Jews in the first year, you have 2 Jews. The second year has 15 Jews, you have 4 Jews. The third year is 22.5, you have 6 Jews. The fourth year in your BA, he's got full Quran and you've got 8 Jews. That's the only difference. He's expected to know the whole Quran. You're expected to know 8 Ajza. The Ajza now, ayahs from the back, first was from the front. But you have to come onto that standard. Whereas if there are Saudis coming to al Qura in the Islamic studies or in the Medina, it's you don't have to go up to their standard. They actually get it a bit easy, isn't it? But Ustad Muhammad, I want to ask you something. How?
Sheikh,
You
before
want to get to there? Tfaddal, Sheikh.
like I haven't really I don't know about the Sheikh was in Makkah. I'm not sure. Like, is it also 2 years as well?
2 years.
2 years old, and Sheikh in Egypt as well. I was
They place you. It could take you up
Yeah.
2 years, 5 years.
You,
It
you,
depends.
you have an
Depends.
entrance exam
So
and
after the
the
4 years, when you left Egypt, you did the 2 years again in Saudi.
in Makkah. Yes, correct.
But I
Again,
mean,
not you couldn't jump there,
You could,
but you had to have a high
you can.
entrance again into. Qura's got like a
No,
high.
you can't jump to university.
Uh-huh.
You could look as 2 years, so
skip
4
one year.
levels.
Yeah, skip a level or two.
So you can skip a level or 2, but you can't really go to the university.
but I know in Medina they do that a lot. You can go directly into the Jamia.
And then in Makkah again, getting to the university,
Is it,
even it's
90%?
Yes, you need to have
90%
and-
aggregate.
and they would only accept 1 or 2 persons per country to go into.
I think, and that's the reason why you will notice that the foreigner percentage in Makkah is
Less.
very low.
Yes.
Because it's
Compared to-
mainly
yes.
geared for Saudis.
Yes,
When Medina was designed and set
For-
up.
that's
for
that's,
the-
that's
yeah.
very right.
Yeah.
That's very true.
So in Egypt, you can take 4 or 5 years.
No, but
No, it
And even,
depends. You see, the person has a different. He could come there, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, you need a visa. Some
Yeah.
people just don't worry, so they go to a center,
Yeah.
and maybe the center gets them a visa. They get 2 years solid in Arabic, to Quran, then do the entrance exam, and then
Then
possibly
replace.
1 year high school, and then you go
Yeah.
to university,
Yeah.
right? Or you do the 2 simultaneously.
Mm.
Okay.
Right. And for me personally, you do subjects in the maths subjects like inheritance.
Mm.
If you're not going into Sharia, you might never do inheritance.
Subhanallah.
Right?
Seriously.
Yeah.
Like, so if you go into da'wah or something, there's a chance you're never
Maybe
going
don't do it. Yeah.
to. Just like, yeah, that's super bad.
You maybe do like Nahu, you maybe do one semester. Certain subjects you only do a semester and you don't see that subject.
I know
again.
the program because I was listening to an interview by students who are studying in Egypt, right? That high school program is super good.
Yeah. So I've and these guys.
Like, I
work
mean,
well.
like,
it's
they study
brilliant.
advanced fiqh and they
Yeah.
do the alfiya in high school.
In high school, yes.
I mean,
correct.
like, people consider themselves locally like, I'm an alim. I mean, the guy is studying in high school level, he's studying the alfiya, which is like, you know.
Yes.
You know, it's called Thanawi, but it's not really high school. Sheikh Waseem can, you
But I
know,
think-
back me up on that. It's like
The
it's
only-
a solid.
the
It's
only-
intense. It's
Yeah,
in-
the only thing with Egypt is the period could be very long.
Mm.
And so I think people, if you are married, you know, you want to graduate, then Saudi looks very, you know, glamorous. Because I mean, it's 6 years, you know, 2 years and 4 years, depending if you pass every semester. But obviously in Egypt, Sheikh Yusuf said something very funny to me a few years back. As die examen opgestaan het kwaad vir sy vrou, dan kan hy vir jou maklik in primary school sit.
No, that is true.
And the placement exams happens in summer, Sheikh. You don't want to be in summer in Egypt because if you go to Saudi, everything is mukayyaf,
yeah.
right? Now everything is mukayyaf, right? Everything is air conditioned. There's no the fan might not even work.
But
So-
Habibi, if I might come in there and say that the system in Egypt, it broadens your vocabulary that much more. And I'll say why,
Because they have
because
to do
your
geography.
subjects are not limited just to the ilmi subjects. It's,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, you do geography, you do history, ulum, sorry, what's the word now? Science,
Mantiq, yeah.
hisab.
I do
We
hisab.
did. I had to sit and what is a mujab and what is a salib and I thought when honest to God, when I thought when I'm going now to Egypt, so I'm done with school, only to get there and find that I'm now going to learn about Napoleon Bonaparte in Arabic. you know.
Subhanallah.
So, yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question. Muhammad. So obviously you get to Medina and you go to the Haram the first time for Jummah and you listen to the khutbah. Percentage wise, how much did you understand?
For me, because I had like a bit of a background, I studied 2 years before going to Medina. I would say when I just landed in Medina, I was shocked. People in the first mustawa, they like speaking Arabic, and these guys accept Islam like
Last week?
last week. I was like, "What's happening here? What did I miss out?" I wasn't like you. I could understand them,
yeah.
but speaking, I had no idea what to say. Assalamu alaikum. That's all I knew. And I never knew like all those words that the baqala and all these things. I didn't know those words. So when I got there, I was shocked. Like these guys, what are you doing here? I was like, I asked the guys, what are you doing? You're supposed to be like kuliya, and it's supposed to be maybe in a higher level in the ma'had, in the shurba. So I was shocked.
If I can come in here now, I've been to Medina and I've been to the Jamia. I've slept in Muhammad's room. I visited them a lot, right? Those guys studied 10 years in Yemen. They come there, they start the shu'bah again, man. I'm like, what?
They come from the Maj.
Yeah, they've studied like intensely, and then they come there, but then they use it for other reasons. Look here, I need to brush up on Quran.
Yeah.
Look here, I know Arabic, but I want my speaking abilities. So they redo it, man. So
Yeah.
alhamdulillah. No.
So Muhammad, percentage wise,
I think about maybe 20%. Like
how did it feel when it went now to 30% and 40% and 50%? And how long did it take to get there?
It took a while. Obviously, the thing is like for me also, like I think when I got there, a lot of people graduating at the moment. So there was no one like Sheikh had, a mentor. Like, okay, I can go to
do this,
and
do that.
I had advice.
Sometimes
The
I
guys
vote against
when
mentorship.
I got there, they were graduating. Like all the senior guys were graduating.
Yeah.
So I got there and I was like,
alone, yeah.
I was like kind of alone, and then I was like, I needed. What should I do? I was phoning Moulana like for advice. What should I read? And it took some time. It was up to now.
Trial
Like
and error.
I find like certain.
But you still consult. Generally, you're a person that consults, mashallah, and it's
So-
something admirable.
So like it was up to now. Like if I hear like of a different program, like a couple of months ago, maybe last year,
Yeah,
I think I came across the Al Qalam Institute in the UK.
Qalam
Yes,
Institute.
of
Yeah.
what's it, Moulana, what's it, Muhammad? I forgot his name.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember. He's from one of these Caribbean countries.
Countries.
What's
Okay.
it? Trinidad
Trinidad
and
Tobago. Is it?
Yeah.
Is it? No.
And then I showed Moulana Aashiq, no, this guy is like teaching.
But this guy, you know what he does now? He goes through Alfiya and all of these books on YouTube, man. He's got like a YouTube where he goes through
Lugha, only lugha.
just Lugha, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's mostly as very grammatic, as very dry grammar that he goes through. So he takes a text and he applies the grammar. He takes a balagha book and he goes through it, basically.
And I think that's just like, for me personally, if you're an accounting to like preference, like I would.
So you tasted Al Qalam and
Yeah.
you did the Shu'bah.
And he
Yeah.
was a Darna in
So
Cape Town.
pros and cons. Okay, so you studied at Darul Naim.
Yeah.
Then you studied in Medina,
Yeah.
Shu'bah.
Yeah.
Then you came across Al Qalam. So you have a taste of three.
Yeah.
I'm far from the mic. You have a taste of three methodologies.
Yeah. I think I could say two, because
Darul Naim is like
It's very similar to
yeah,
the column
okay.
thing, yeah.
Okay.
So it's, you have your Arab taste, and then you have the say the Dars Nizami
Yes.
taste. So I think for me personally, if a person had to go maybe for the first 3 years of that, what they call the Alim course,
Dars Nizam, yeah.
yes, then go from there to Medina, or go from there to an country, Arabic country. Arab country, he would fit in perfectly because he understands all the grammar. He doesn't need to worry about any grammar.
Brush up, yeah.
And now he can concentrate on
Speaking
and
yeah.
understanding, and is able to read text already. So,
But his interest, you see, the thing is, it depends also why you're studying, man.
But
his interest is in text.
Yeah.
He wants to unlock text. So
Yes.
that grammar approach makes very much sense to him. Man. Other people, I want to master the ability to speak Arabic like an Arab. You get what I'm saying?
Interesting.
But what I can add over there is, I lost my train of thought now.
We don't have to mention Cape Town anymore. Uber.
yeah.
I lost,
Okay,
I lost my train of thought now.
Okay, my Sheikh. So we shared our experience, and I personally, I think I told somebody last night that I told Sheikh Waseem read, because I used that approach again. Man. I didn't want to have dead vocabulary. That's not going to
Yeah.
benefit me. So I would read and look up, and then and I would try not to write, man, translate.
Yeah. Just keep.
Yeah, because that's the way they taught us the normal conversation Arabic, and that's how I tried to. So that's our personal experience. So now, coming to a person watching, and this person wants to study Arabic. They can't travel, or they can travel. We can get to the travel part again. They have the two options. What would we advise a student who says, "Look, I want enough Arabic to unlock text"? Where do you start? Where do you go to?
I would say start with your local resources.
Okay.
It depends also what amount of. So you get lots of institutions like evening classes. Those learners will learn Arabic, but to a certain extent only. Will they ever be able to unlock text and understand the durus of the scholars? That's a different question.
Maybe one out of you do get. No, it's not that you don't get, but
if you are going to study Arabic once a week or twice a week, it's going to take a very long time. So we have lots of resources. We have lots of mashayikh and very qualified people who can teach you. If you are doing it night and day for a certain amount, this is my opinion and I could be wrong. If you are doing something like this, maybe for 6-7 years, if long, alhamdulillah, consistently, then you will reach a certain level of comfortability. You know,
Sheikh, I think it's you who asked the question, or one of the other instructors at Al Furqan, and I think Sheikh Waseem is somebody who's very capable of answering that. The older imams, man, how did they learn Arabic, Sheikh Waseem? I mean, you spent a lot of time with Imam Aashiq Salih, rahimahullah ta'ala, and he had again spent lots of time with senior mashayikh, some of them who have never traveled, the likes of Sheikh Ismail Johnson, for example, was a language.
Sheikh Ismail Johnson, the one that they used to call
Imam Kufait.
Yeah, I mean, he was a grammarian. He was he was like the an authority in language. Do you know?
I think if I could don't quote me on this, but
You live in the front of people.
remember our older imma, they or rather our older imma, they generally spoke Afrikaans. And what we also need to understand at the time, Islam, we're talking about 200 years ago, 200 plus years ago. Islam wasn't freely, you couldn't freely preach Islam around. So what they would do is they would use the Arabic language, or rather the huruf of the Arabic
Script,
language, the script of the Arabic language, and they would write
Yeah, I
in
saw a
Arabic.
Tajweed book by Sheikh Ismail Hanif.
Yes,
I
yes,
have
yes,
a
yes.
few. I have a few. I have a book called القول المفيد في أحكام المسافر, something like that. But it's written with Arabic script. I call it
Yeah.
Arab cards. It's written in Arabic. If you look at as J travel, it's like
Yes,
that.
yes.
It's
So,
amazing.
yes, so they would write in with the Arabic letters, but it will actually be Afrikaans, and that was their way of sending letters to each other, speaking.
Almost like in Morse code.
Something like that. Yes,
Alliteration.
correct. Even though we find it very difficult. I mean, I picked up one of Sheikh Ahmed Bihadi, and he wrote an Afrikaans book written in Arabic on the Jumu'ah, the Salah of Dhuhr after Jumu'ah. Ya Allah.
Zeker op ons nou diep.
You have to. No.
Remember, those were heavy masail.
Yes.
You know, the issue of wali. The issue of like the dhuhr.
It was
after
fiqh
the
issues. It was mostly
like today,
but
it's like
that was
small issues.
yeah.
Like, but that time it was like
It was
hey,
no, they would have the bicharas and
your bichara, yeah.
That's not the reason why we hear this even, but I mean that is that. So Arabic played a very big role amongst our predecessors.
But those many of those mashayikh studied overseas.
Coming to that now.
Yeah.
Now Imam Kufait and Tayuri.
Imam Yusuf Ahmad.
Even the late Sheikh, what's his name? The student of Sheikh Shakir Khamildin. The famous one that wrote the books, man.
Rahim
Salih. He never traveled per se. He was in Egypt.
Later
he was in Egypt. Yeah.
Later,
Not to study Arabic per se.
Yeah, no. He went for research, but he was already established as a student of knowledge.
Someone who really came to change the Arabic language basically in Cape Town was Sheikh Ismail Hanif Edwards. If you look at his students, the late Imam Abdullah Harun, Imam Ismail Johnson, the books that he wrote. Wow.
So what we're basically saying is that Sheikh Ismail Hanif Edwards was a legacy, very much like Sheikh Saleh Abadi was in Quran, and he had a legacy. And then we have Sheikh Ismail Hanif who
he had a method of teaching to produce students the likes of
within taught students.
Exactly.
And these shuyukh,
The mashayikh, the sheikh basically.
Like today we have students. Those students can't necessarily access books, man. But these mashayikh that were produced, they could access books, they could read in Arabic.
Definitely. I mean, Imam Ismail Johnson, he did not study in any Arab country or any ulum for that matter. Yet he was able to produce and on. I'm talking about. You know, he's these students that can sit with Arabs in terms of grammar and so on, or any other subject for that matter. I was amazed. You had people like Hashim Saleh, for example, who studied with under Imam Kufait. He was brilliant in grammar. I mean, we came from Egypt. We came to sit by him. You know, to assist us with nahu, with sarf, and they were able to rattle, like you were saying, that fa'ala, you know. So for someone to have been able to produce students of that nature, they would have had to have a brilliant ustad like Imam Ismail Hanif Edwards, who died at a young age, by the way.
Exactly.
What about reinstating or reviving mentorship? Being like if you see that one student in your class that could potentially unlock that text, that could potentially be a Sheikh Ismail Johnson. Or Imam Yusuf Ahmad, or, you know, people who actually make something of that knowledge. In today's time, how possible?
You know, I've come across many students like that. Like you can see brilliance in the student, man. You can see the athar of brilliance in this guy. You know, if he just gets the correct advice and proper nurturing, this could be a great talib al-ilm. You know, and I think it's important that we, you know, take that approach to our students. If we see brilliant students who can excel, then we give them that little bit extra basically on the side.
And he will come for more.
And on what Sheikh Waseem mentioned, another person, and I don't know him very well, right? I know Sheikh Waseem is the expert
After Imam Hashim Saleh,
when it comes to the knowledge and the history of our late scholars. Sheikh from the north, or the one from North Pine, Hanif Kamar.
Oh,
yes.
I think his takhassus was Arabic.
He's the Siba way of Cape Town.
Yeah, he's got a method again of teaching Arabic.
Many of the old imams that I would interact with told me, like Sheikh, they would go to him for private classes on the side, and they would pay him, and he would teach them Arabic. You know, so we have an amazing culture of the Arabic language and learning. And our shuyukh, like I feel that they put a lot of effort in it. Like if I look at the current crop of local graduates, international graduates, and I compare them to the old shuyukh, we can't really compare them.
You know, I was speaking to Imam Ismail, Imam Qasim,
Yes.
Imam
Kachacha.
Kachacha. And then we were speaking about Mutun.
Rahimahullah.
Rahimahullah ta'ala. We were speaking about Mutun.
Mm.
And he was telling me his grandfather made him
Memorize.
memorize Mutun in Mantiq, made him memorize the
wow.
Who's this?
Ajuriyya.
Which imam?
Imam Qasim Ismail, the father of Sheikh Abu Bakr. in
Of
Masjid al-Bahar.
Stamford.
He passed on earlier this year or last
Yes,
year.
yes.
Very recent, not too long ago. But he told me that his grandfather, instructed him, Mark Day, Matan Farm, and at the time he didn't even understand what he was doing, but then obviously you see the benefit of it later.
No, but we'll see that poetry is it is amazing, and if you study the poetry and then get the understanding of it, it's very you are able to remember it, for lack of a better term. Aashiq was speaking about the Alfiyat ibn Malik now, where grammar is concerned.
Sheikh Ibrahim Charles sent a message. He says, "Tell Sheikh Waseem to tell the story of our first day at Neil."
The first day of Marcus Neil.
The story of the Malika.
Yes, correct. So Sheikh Ibrahim, his surname is Charles.
Yeah.
And we're sitting in
lovingly
class.
call him Charlie. Sheikh Charlie.
Yes. So each and every one of us is we introducing ourselves, who we are, with our names and our surnames and so on. And so they started standing there, and he says, Sheikh Ibrahim says, my name is Ibrahim Charles. Sheikh Ibrahim has a sister by the name of Malika.
Okay.
And the Ustad then says, Kaif al-Malika? And I'm looking at him, and he's looking, but how do you know Malika? Right? But because his name is Charles, Prince Charles, the teacher was referring to the Queen.
But interestingly enough, I don't know if you guys experienced that in Egypt. If you have a surname like Charles or Abrams, you have to redo your Shahada. You actually go to the Mashikhatul Azhar.
I found that.
Yeah, and you have to become Muslim. Then they give you a certificate that you're now Muslim, and then you can apply to study. Before that, no. Right, Sheikh. So, okay.
But another individual that was very who loved the Arabic language a lot and promoted the study of the Arabic language a lot is the late Dr. I think Dr. Sulaiman Nuruddin.
Yes.
No, he's the person that spoke about. I heard the first time speaking about the mu'allaqat, man, and he would read it and he would write it out. He was very passionate. He had a brilliant mind, man. SubhanAllah.
And this just comes to certain individuals. So we're in Cape Town, and I want to study Arabic. So you say use your local
resources, and there's a lot.
So on every corner there's an Arabic institute.
Every hook and try there's an Arabic institute. Obviously I'm gonna say Al Furqan.
Come. Just come.
Al Furqan Institute, inshallah, at what's it? Shaftesbury.
The Grey Sufi. The Grey Masjid.
The Grey Masjid. Number one. That's one institute. There's like a lot, man. I'm gonna give a shout out to Darul Naim as well.
Okay.
And all the affiliates.
Okay.
They also have many. Depending on what is your flavor. If you want to learn Quranic Arabic and grammar based Arabic, then that's the place you're probably gonna go. We also do some of that, but that's the Maidan. What is there? There's so many programs online.
Ma'ad Lugha Arabiya.
Ma'ad Lughat Al-Arabiya of Sheikh Anwar. Yeah, full time. They have a full time program over there. Thinking now. Even online.
YouTube is a great source. There's a lot of material.
What's that guy from Canada's
Gabriel.
No, that's not Gabriel. It's
Aashiq. Not Gabriel Romani. There's another Jibril.
No.
Jibril guy, right?
Jibril guy. Yeah. He does the Medina book. He's a graduate from Medina University. Okay. But this brother Aasif, man, the one from Canada. He's got a long surname. He's a revert to Islam.
Was it Toronto?
He's from Toronto. He became a Muslim in his 50s. And close to his 60s, he went to Jordan to learn Arabic. He teaches all the Medina, not the Medina books. It's those three books on Qira'ah. He teaches that online. but it's got a very nice way of teaching it, man.
But even the Medina books,
LQ
it wasn't.
Toronto, that's it.
Sorry,
LQ Toronto.
LQ Toronto.
That,
No, but his surname and
Yeah,
Aas,
yeah.
brother Aas
Yeah,
or
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I mean, even like look at the Medina books. It wasn't written by an Arab man.
No, it was
So
written by
that the Sheikh that wrote it, what was his name?
Sheikh
Abdurrahim.
Fab Rahim. I'm not
Fab
gonna. The
Yeah,
Far
just
name is
do it.
very complicated. That's a
I-
Hindu name or
I
something.
just dodged the name in totality. Yeah. So, but he wrote it as
because he
non-Arab
understands
speak-
the
needs.
dilemma of a
new
of a
student.
foreigner,
Yeah.
of someone who's learning the language. And but for clarification, when people say I've studied the Medina books, in the Medina syllabus, the 2-year program, they do many books.
Yes.
They do ta'bir and all of these imla.
Mm.
It's just the 3 books on reading that you're doing.
Yeah.
So people shouldn't confuse that. I studied the Medina
And,
syllabus.
and you know the funny thing is when you go to any bookshop in Cape Town and you ask for the Medina books, there's always book 3 in stock, right? And maybe some book 2s. Book 1 is always sold out, which
Yeah.
means most people don't
progress further.
progress further
So
than.
smart.
Sheikh Yusuf, if I may come in here, if for a general Cape Townian wanting to learn the Arabic language, I think the very first question I need to ask myself.
That's your takhassus, teaching
Oh,
Arabic.
yes,
so-
Mashallah.
No,
Mashallah.
Moulana Aashiq
No,
is,
no.
the very first thing that I need to ask myself is what is it that I want? What is my goal? What is the purpose of me doing the Arabic language? Is it just to have a conversation? Is it to understand the Quran? However, whatever my goal is, personally, I think that my first step towards any language is to learn the conversation of the language. I mean, if you look at grade 1,
You
sub
can't
A,
lose with going the
Yeah, yeah.
conversational route.
we
you can't
learned
lose.
no grammar in sub A. So, okay, at that time it was sub A, sub B. You know,
With the
gra-
stuff that the kids learn now, Sheikh.
so you first learn to speak the language, you learn the words of the language. I tell my students, learn as much vocabulary as you can, put up cards
flashcards.
around the house, you know, on the fridge, everywhere, you know. Learn as much vocabulary because even if you're going to learn the grammar, your examples are going to come from that vocabulary. So your first step to any language is to learn the conversation to learn to speak the language. Yes, it's going to be difficult at first. Listen to simple Arabic lectures, not difficult ones, very, very simple, because in order for you to speak a language, you must understand. So first get to understand the language, then you're going to learn to speak the language. Once you speak the language, now you can speak about an ism and a fi'l and a harf and fa'ala, fa'alu and all of those things, you know. So yes, I would say get to learn to speak the language first. That is
definitely.
important.
So it's speaking, and then it's writing, or speaking,
Yes.
reading, writing. Right? We're speaking about listening to simple lectures. Definitely don't listen to Sheikh Sudais, right? Because, you know, for me, it was like after Juma, you see this person translating Sheikh Sudais' khutbah, and you're thinking, but how do you, I mean, maybe it's just
Habibi,
going through the verses, but you can't
yes,
translate
no,
Sheikh
no.
Sudais' khutbah.
Habibi, like I said,
You lived there for years.
I came from Egypt and now I'm sitting in the haram and I mean, we've Sudais, ma for the word, but Sudais mal, you know.
Yeah.
So now you're sitting in the haram and Sheikh Sudais, you just hear that voice saying Assalamu alaikum and you're ecstatic because Sheikh Sudais, I mean, come on. And then he starts speaking and I'm like,
For the next 20
is
minutes,
this
you're
man
happy.
saying?
Everything is rhyming,
Because
but ik verstaan
Everything
niks.
has to rhyme. Sudais has just got that that ability, you know. He's baligh, mashallah. You know? So it's
You can
very.
spit them around.
But like Sheikh Muhammad Hassan is a good person to listen
Oh no, definitely.
Jullie brengen mij nou nog erop, man.
No. Sheikh Muhammad Hassan is
he's-
simple. He's, the Arabic, he
Like the
makes
Prophet
you
said,
understand.
Inna min al-bayani la-sihra.
Yeah.
I mean, the Mashaykh before us, the generation before us used to listen to Sheikh Kishk. I still wonder how they understood because Sheikh Kishk used to go Amiya.
Amiya, yes, correct.
But you have Sheikh Muhammad Hassan, he sticks to the Fusha throughout. Sheikh
But
Ishaq al-Huwaini.
how's your knowledge of the Amiya, of the Egyptian Amiya?
Well,
Like I tried to listen to Sheikh Abdul Karim al-Ma'bad.
yeah, no, he's...
It's impossible.
And he
I
spent so many years in Saudi.
I don't understand one, and he teaches a lot.
It's mixed with French. And I think that's why.
It doesn't make any.
No,
like,
besides, okay, you first get the pronunciation, which is different. Right? And this is across countries. For me, like to pick up the jim as being g,
Uh.
that's fine. But in Kuwait, the jim is a ya.
Ya
So let's say
Allah.
the ya instead of the judge.
Ah,
And you get to Egypt, they say farcha.
yeah.
Like
Ah.
so I think with time
Mm.
you
But I mean-
I couldn't master it. No, there's some students who just master it.
Mm.
They spend time on the street speaking to people, and they can just pick. And some people just have an ear.
They have a
But
fleet
it was
for it,
never
yeah,
my
I think.
focus, man. It was
Ah.
never, I picked it up, yes, living
Like-
there, but it wasn't my focus to learn it.
Like I wanted to go to Egypt after I graduated from the
Mm.
madrasa.
Mm.
So the late Mufti Taha told me, don't go.
And he went.
He went. He said, don't go.
Mm.
He said, read.
Mm.
He said, read. He said, I was in Egypt for 2 years. At that time, they would have a program, postgraduate program for students who studied in other schools, in other madaris. So he came from Dioban and he went over to Egypt, right? And he said, the late Mufti Jadul Haq,
Mm.
what would he do? He would read a book, he would read the Arabic and just tarjama it in Amiyah. He says, like, you know, that you can, why would you want to spend all that money?
Sheikh used to get that in the haram with the old mashayikh. When I came to Madina's haram, Sheikh Abu Bakr al-Jazairi was like very old.
Yes.
And the reader would read and he would just say, nah. Imagine you sitting, travel all the way
Ah.
to be in front of the Sheikh, the reader's reading. And then you stop
Anybody
the Sheikh and say, nah. No, this
Ah.
is nothing.
Ah.
Continue. That's what it is.
Another Sheikh that's good to listen to, me and Sheikh Muhammad, we both listen to him, is Sheikh Mutlaq al-Jasir.
Ah.
Because he teaches a lot of small mutun, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he teaches matan on sirah, matan waraqat, the
Mm.
qawaid fiqhiyya, fiqh. He obviously Hanbali fiqh. But
Precision.
like,
Also
we
really
literally listen
Sheikh take the exam?
hours. What?
Take the exam.
Yeah, I take all the exams. Like, I've listened to probably hours since 27. I've been listening to him. Hours and hours and hours of him, and I've like it's amazing, a tool, you know, because there's two benefits: your knowledge of Arabic, your skill of listening is always remaining fresh in your mind, and number two, you are learning ilm on the side just by. So I drive with it on, playing it on.
Okay.
Like the Arba'in is completed, then he goes to Kitab al-Tawheed. You get what I'm saying? So that's a perfect resource as well. I'm thinking about another Sheikh. Thinking quickly. There's a lot, man. There's a lot online.
There's
in
a lot of
YouTube.
mashayikh that's speaking much. I mean, if you listen
Especially
to
the Khaliji Mashayikh.
if you listen to
honestly.
yeah, okay, but first the Khaliji mashayikh, the muftis and so. I mean,
Ah.
in my early days, I'd love to listen to Sheikh bin Baz,
Ah.
but I couldn't understand because
Ah.
of the graphy.
Yes.
With all due respect to the Sheikh,
And also
you know-
the recordings were poor.
Yeah.
The
recordings were very poor, and that was the best recordings. Even
Yeah.
But if I may, Maaf Mashaykh, and then, but perhaps my first step in wanting to listen to Arabic language would be on YouTube. You get this little cartoons,
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
smaller, this 2-minute clips,
Yeah,
5-minute clips, you know,
Yeah.
where
We may be jumping the gun, yeah, but I
Ah.
mean, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
you know, just to start off with those. I mean, sometimes people don't want to listen for hours. I mean, those 2-minute clips, those 5-minute clips that they have
Yeah,
on
yeah, yeah,
YouTube, it's there, it's available that people can listen. to.
Mashayikh, let's speak dictionaries.
Okay.
So, I don't know how things have evolved.
Yeah,
now
yeah, yeah.
I'm like old fashioned because
Habibi, I'm
you-
lazy, so
in the
I'll read-
90s,
it.
in the
Google.
90s, Hans Weer. Alles Hans
Uh-uh.
Weer. Hans Weer. Do people still use the
We finally, you know, that dictionary was written
for Orientalists?
no in the time
Ah.
of Hitler.
Mm.
No,
Yeah,
he
but
was he's a
German.
German. He's a German.
German Jew.
Right, right.
Oh.
I think he was part of the Nazi organization.
No, I think he was a Jew actually.
He's got a detailed preface muqaddimah to the dictionary. He explains all the things why he wrote it and stuff like that. We used to finally call him Hans Vos, and we used to the
Salam.
teachers used to tell us, "Kyk die man, he made such an amount. It's a great hit, man.
Oh no,
I mean,
definitely.
yo, subhanallah.
Brilliant.
Yet he doesn't have hidayah, man.
Like the Mojam, الألفاظ Mojam
Yeah, yeah.
الفهرس للألفاظ الحديث.
Yeah. For Abdul Baqi.
Yeah, and
Or Adel
Orientalists.
Baqi, something,
yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
besides Sheikh Muhammad Fuad, I mean, it was an Orientalist
Yeah.
project, yeah.
Yeah. So, what was the question again?
Hans
Hans
Vos.
Weer.
Yeah, the Hans Boers, I think, as you progress in studies, you realize it is a very limited dictionary.
Mm.
You know, it's super limited, right? In the beginning, it
But it
first
could be like book one, where people never, you know.
Sorry?
It
It could be
depends.
like book one, Medina, where people don't go further.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
you realize it's very limited.
So what do
And-
people use these days? It's not Hans Weer.
Like what
anymore.
I-
Habibi, I'm lazy, so the Maurid is my go-to.
Okay.
I use a program on YouTube, on Google called Al-Ma'ani.
المعاني.
Okay.
It gives you like everything. It gives you the contextual translation. If
Oh,
it's used
wow.
in medicine, if it's used in science, if it's used in like this, if
Brilliant.
it's used in the religious sciences, it's called Al-Ma'ani.
Oh, yes, I've
Especially when I
come
check
across
up
it.
people's names.
Mm.
When I
Whoa,
name
that Mashayikh. Sheikh, you open a can of worms.
Oh, names.
Names given to people. I mean,
Yes, salam.
the Prophet gives us guidelines.
Mhm.
the most beloved names are Abdullah and Abdul Rahman.
Mm.
But still, we find in 2022, when we have programs like Ma'ani, people still giving
Weird names.
weird,
Yeah.
weird names. What
Most
is it? What's it with? What are you? Sheikh, I need an exotic name.
No, they want an uncommon name.
Yeah.
Uncommon. It must be uncommon. you know.
My experience with names is most people take the book of names and look at the Englishman, and due to mispronunciation. So
Yeah.
I teach kids, right? So the boy's name is Zafir. I tell them no, it's not it's Zafir. You know, victorious. Zafir.
Yes,
It's
yeah.
like- He says no, it's Zafir.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying? So I think it's based upon the inability to recognize the properly. That's why I make that whenever I name children, I make it like a darsman.
Yeah.
So I go through the entire sunnah process. This is what we do. We do
Abu Musa
adhan.
al-Ash'ari,
We do adhan. That's the sunnah. This is what science say.
Mm.
We do the tahniq. This is sunnah. This is what science say. And then when I come to the name, I explain him. The name. This is.
But
the
you
proper-
get like periods when certain name becomes very famous because I like personally I don't know any Tariqs or Ziyads in the 60s or 70s. That's what names given
yeah.
at that time. But then I find a common name in people now around about 50 is the name Naguib, right?
Yeah.
But then some would say no, it's Najib. But again, they were named after Naguib Mahfouz.
But I know a
Egyptian guy.
naqib again. A naqib,
Naqib.
nuqaba,
Is it?
leader like.
Okay,
representative.
okay.
Can I just say one thing? When it comes to names, please, asseblief, kanala min fadlik, do not use Google.
Yeah.
Do not use Google.
Ah.
People would phone me, can you give my child's name? I'm saying, what's the name? They say, this is, where did you find this name?
Google.
On Google. I said, but it doesn't even make sense. It doesn't. I
Sheikh,
don't-
it's in the Quran. Somebody says, I want to name my daughter. What's the name? It's in Surah Kaf. Imra. لقد جئت شيئا
And Imra.
Imra. And
Again.
I got a name. You have a few of them.
Yeah.
What was the most strangest name you come across? For me,
Mm.
my father, he said someone asked him to give the child's name Alayna.
Alayna.
Alayna, upon us.
Now they say in the past what they would do is, and fathers would do this, they would open the Quran and they would do this and that.
Mm.
So Tajri is an example.
Mm.
Ida Nudia.
You know people by
Yeah,
the
I know one. Ida Nudia. What else?
Sibghat Allah. Yeah, no,
Really?
Yeah.
But what is that? Is that like an Asian?
Yeah, Indonesian guy.
Because in Pakistan and those places, having the idafa names is like the cricketers, man. You know,
Inzimam al-Haq.
Zimam al-Haq, and they have all that idafa names and stuff like that. Yeah. But like what people do is they don't know the Arabic. They want they look at the meaning. So beautiful flower, or a Persian flower.
Habibi, in Cape Town, it's not even the meaning, it's how it's the
Sound.
pronunciation
Sound.
of the word, how
Yeah.
it sounds. So
And
now
then
you
they
have a
butcher the actual.
Habibi, besides the butchering, I like the name Samina. I want to give my daughter's name Samina. I'm like, Samina, do you know what Samina means?
Like okay, okay. If I'm gonna say now, I was teaching at the institution, right? And there was a new Muslim girl, and she said her name was Zara. I said number one, there's no za in Arabic, and there's no r. Right, so it's za, it's flat. There's nothing wrong, but they wanted must know so fancy, and the girl never came back to school. It was like the once or twice after that. I don't know if it was that, but she didn't take it lightly when I said, look, I'm going to call you Zara, Zara or Zahra.
Zahra.
But there's no Zara. There's no such thing. Didn't like it. And then you find when you actually do tell people, okay, the name is wrong. Well, my father's name is that. That's how we will. Inna wajadna aba'ana.
True.
Anyway, Mashaykh, we've gone quite well over time. Sheikh, any closing remarks? I'll give each one a closing.
Closing remarks, inshallah. I think it is the duty of every Muslim to learn the Arabic language. If you never learn the Arabic language, that basically means you'll be in the dark for the rest of your life. And Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah mentioned something amazing. He said, and with this was his opinion, and Allah Ta'ala knows best. He said the learning of the Arabic language is fard. You know why? Because knowledge of the Quran and Sunnah is fard. And as the famous qaida goes,
ما لا يتم الواجب.
ما لا يتم الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. So based on that, he used to say, learning Arabic language is a necessity. And Umar bin al-Khattab used to say, learn the Arabic language. تعلموا اللغة العربية. فإنها من دينكم. It is from your deen and it strengthens your mind. And these are my colleagues, and I can definitely say that is true. That it is from our deen, and these are people of intelligence. So inshallah, as Muslims, inshallah, we need to learn. In whatever capacity, inshallah, learn some of the Arabic language,
the
inshallah ta'ala.
Yes, I will add on to what Moulana just said now. An encouragement to one and all. Cape Townians are generally known to love the Quran. And once you have, even if it's just a bit of understanding of the Quran, and it brings new meaning to your recitation, or just to the listening, to listening to the Quran. If you really truly understand, your love for the Quran will increase so much. So yes, I mean, I'm teaching the Quran, alhamdulillah, and sometimes I just sit in class listening to the student reciting, and I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize, just by listening, I didn't even realize that is what it actually means. And I start writing my khutbah on that again, you know. But again, coming to try your utmost best to learn the Quran, so that to learn the Arabic language, so that you may understand the Quran, inshallah.
For me, everyone that's watching, they should have like the goal, like I need to learn the Arabic language, and it depends also on how much time can I give, how much time. Am I a student? Am I someone that's retired? I know people personally that, after going through life, ending up 60s, and they go to the class
and they make a success of it.
And they make a success of it. They are able to open the Quran and translate, and that's the most important thing I would say is the bare minimum that we need to know is what Allah is telling us. That's the most important thing that we need to know, is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in the Quran. That's the bare minimum. We're going to the Sunnah, that's something second. But the most important thing is that you know what Allah is telling you, that when you worship Allah,
Allah speaking to us. It's Allah, we speak to Allah in the Quran. Allah speaks to us.
So when we do that takbir, Allahu Akbar, and we will go in, we see everything around us, but we go into some place where we find that contentment, and we find that that salah becomes lovely, and it becomes, sometimes we have this thing about the salah, it's difficult upon us. But if we knew what we are saying in the salah, it will transform everything about us, and that salah will become a means of notification and for us. It will nourish us. Sorry, it will nourish us, and it will make us, that Muslim that we need to be, that abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we need to be, and it will change our lives, subhanallah. That language will change our lives,
100%. I always look at the morning adhkar, and the fact that self-help gurus speak about the mantra and starting days positively, man. And if you actually look at the morning adhkar, yes, it's remembering Allah, but it's like you giving yourself positive reinforcement. You're like basically motivating yourself to get through the day.
Yes.
With Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help, with Allah's nur in front of you, behind you, next to you, on each side, on top of you. I mean, how can you go wrong? And if you actually understand it and not just rattle it off, it does have a different. Sheikh, shukran to all of you guys. A special shukran to Muhammad, and I asked him off, and he's in Cape Town. He's based in PE, but he's in Cape Town not for not a very happy reason, but unfortunately we come from Allah, and to Allah is our return. And everybody who speaks about your father speaks about his akhlaq, speaks about the work he's done, speaks about how he encouraged people to have a last will and testament, and even beyond his work in the bank, he spent weekends training people, teaching people about the importance of this very important Islamic aspect. So we ask that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants him a high status in Jannah, inshallah, and that he gathers you and us fil firdaus al-a'la. We can speak in Jannah about these nights where we sat and spoke about Arabic and other topics, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
هلا بالخميس هلا بالخميس ويكند عيال هلا بالخميس هلا بالخميس هلا بالخميس ويكند عيال هلا بالخميس